one of the things that I'm going to do today that's a little bit different is I'm going to ask for your input on the placement of a new part that I think can either go into the lessons today about civic engagement, or maybe it deserves its own place on the website. It is an art-based program. And so I think it will, I think at least a part of it will fit in today's, the first part, which is what's your issue? Because generally that focuses on young people looking at themselves and learning how to influence others within their communities. And then I Am the Change is more the active, how do you do this stuff. And we've always focused more on influencing legislators in the second part than in the first part. So I'm going to put it into an early part of the what's your issue? And then I'm going to tell you the second place that I'm thinking of putting it, and then look at the website and show you where the third place might be, and just ask for your feedback since you are the kind of people who'll be using it. The other thing that I know I should do that I realized yesterday is that when you're teaching in the classroom, you need certain materials. And so I don't have a materials list right now at the beginning of each one of the lessons. Do you think it would be helpful, or do you think it would be, you just read through it and look at the website and you see the avatars and that sort of thing? So feedback from you. Which would you prefer?
I like the idea of the materials because it introduces us to the fact that you're going to be utilizing them.
Right on the lesson, like on
Yeah.
the
No,
screen.
yeah.
Okay. Anybody have a different point of view?
No, that makes sense.
No, I have a quick question though. I'm trying to follow on your website. Is this module 2 that we're doing today, or?
No, this is the Fighting for Change
Okay,
series
got
of
it.
lessons, and then it's
Got it.
module 1 and 2 there that we'll be
Okay.
working on. Okay. All right. The other thing that I didn't go through with you yesterday, I'm going to go to the website. We get to we get to all of the lessons that are available to people who want to teach them by going to energizingyoungvoters.com. And I'm going to take this off so you can see what the homepage looks like. And then you can find out more about each of the groups. So there's a page for young voters or young people. There's a page for educators and community leaders. And then there's a page for the League of Women Voters. That last page is primarily where voter registration information is. The curriculum is in the educators and communities. And then the young voters page will have all of the information about the ambassador program and the youth advisory council. But to get to what we need today, you can either go to the icon that's the apple for teachers, or you can go up to the, this always drives me crazy. On the heading there, there's a what we do. And if you pull the drop-down menu, you can get to the educators and community groups that way. You'll have the pop-up. You close it, and then you scroll down, and you'll see the 2 suites of programs that we have, which match the 2 league goals. So Fighting for the Vote matches the Empowering Voters goal, and the Fighting for Change matches the Defending Democracy goals. Today, we're going to be working on the first 2 modules in the Fighting for Change programs. You click on any of them where the plus sign is, and you will see a link to the module, and you'll see a link to the last video training that we had on that particular model. And I say the last because each time we offer the training, there may be some new things in the program. And so if you want to work with the most up-to-date materials that we have, it's good to just look at the training video that's on the website for that particular module if you haven't already experienced it or you don't have your own version of it. When you click on the view module for Fighting for Change, you'll see And I clicked on module 1. So it's what's your issue? You'll see a couple of folders. I'm going to go to other states first. Those people who were here yesterday, Judy Darrow was on the call, and she mentioned that they have created their own versions for Washington State, and that reflects the way Washington State works, which is important when you're but going back, you'll see that there are 2 folders, and one here says high school and college, and the other one says middle school. When we piloted this particular series, we realized that there really did need to be some modifications for middle school versus high school. One of those things that we learned was that kids in middle schools didn't know how to write a formal letter or a formal email. And so in the I am the change part, that's the focus of the contact with an elected official. And that focuses on the local school board, actually, but it could also be the municipal that they work with. The high school and college is much more complicated. So because there are several things you can do, and you're working with state level and federal level contacts. So we've separated that out. The middle school version has some of what's your issue and some of what's I am the change combined into a single lesson. So if you're working with middle school, just go to the middle school folder. But today we're going to work with the high school and college level, because then you will see everything that's available to you. The other thing that you'll see are 2 separate files. One is a worksheet. And when I'm teaching in person, I print these and I bring them with me, because the kids are going to be watching some videos. And if they have to stop and actually write it down instead of thinking about what their answer might be, it really does focus them better. So there are 2 questions on that. And this is a poll that exists, which you can do both in person and online. If you do it in person, and kids are allowed to use their phones, you can actually give them a QR code that will let them go to this particular poll that they can answer. Otherwise, you can just have them raise their hands or stand up or whatever. I usually have kids stand up because I like the bigger physical activity to keep the kids' attention better, I feel.
Mhm.
All right, but let's go to the high school and college version. And what you'll see again is the slideshow, and then you'll see a script. And I'm going to show you the script on this one because you'll see things that are color coded. That's because this was developed specifically during COVID, specifically to do online presentations. And then we changed it so that it could be an in-person presentation when we were kind of in transition. So anything that's in red represents something that you would do if you were teaching this remotely. And anything in blue represents what you would do if you were teaching it in person. Yesterday, when I talked about using the script, I mentioned that I find it helpful to highlight the sections that the words that I'm specifically going to be saying when I teach. And I find that really important when I'm teaching with a partner, which I would highly recommend. If you go in with 2 people, you have backup support should something happen, and that's really helpful. I have found it helpful. So the partner would use one color and I would use a different color so that we know when to speak. What I found in these lessons that were designed first for remote presentations is that I go in and I remove anything that I'm not going to use. So when I'm in person, I remove everything that's in red. So all I'm seeing is what I'm supposed to do when I'm up in front of a class in person. If I'm doing it with an online program, I remove everything that's in blue. So it's all going to stay there, but it's less confusing when you use the script if it's cleaner, so that you don't have to struggle through finding the words that you want to actually use on the day that you're doing the presentation. You'll also see that there are notes to the teacher, and then there are things that say begin with say, and I'm just going to put another space in there. The things that you're going to say are what you're particularly going to pay attention to, but when you're preparing, this is the information that you want to know about. We went through this yesterday. I talked about the what you say about the league, and obviously you can add to it or take away from that. And then again, down here, there's something that we would say. So this would be also highlighted. I'm going to go to the slideshow now. And what you can see down the left is the film strip. And you can see that I've hidden some of the slides. One of those is just our agreement that anything that you use, you'll check to make sure it's accurate, that you will not take it and make it your own, you won't make money on it, and that you will respect our copyright. I'll say too, all of these programs, I said this yesterday, they're all adaptable. If you add a slide because you find that it's appropriate for the groups that you work with, give yourself credit. You can see down here in the lower right-hand corner, we have a copyright that says Energizing Young Voters. But if you create a slide, give yourself credit for that. And also make sure that you check illustrations, that they have no copyright restrictions themselves. Because if we use illustrations that have copyright restrictions, there are actually little bots that run around the internet and find those, and then you get fined. So you don't want that to happen. All right. Again, here you can see the red and the blue. And here, in the past, we used something called Jamboards. Jamboards is no longer. So I'm going to have to take out the word Jamboards. At this point in time, when I do something, that was very helpful when we were presenting remotely because it was very interactive. At this point in time, most of the time when I present online, it's to adults like you, and you can use the chat box for doing that. So if you are doing training of people in your area and you're doing it remotely, that's the solution that I would use, is to just use the chat. All right, and then the other thing, that I'll notice, these are credits for the pictures that are there, which we've learned we're supposed to do. So if you add a slide, make sure you give it a credit. We've added our contacts. You might want to make a slide for yourself that has your own contact information. And the slide that I'm not going to click here is information about our ambassador program. This needs to be updated because there is much that's going on with that ambassador program. So I'm going to hide that slide. And I'm going to hide this one. And then we'll go from there. All right. So just like yesterday, I have the script in front of me, and we've learned that it doesn't matter. You can read it, and it will be just as effective as if you don't read it. So this is the way you would start with the kids. What we're trying to do is to develop the idea that people think differently from one another and that that's okay. So the first thing in person, what I do is I ask the kids, what kind of pizza do you prefer? Do you like it just with cheese, or do you like toppings on it? And I ask them to get up and to stand in opposite corners of the room. So the north corner would be if you like it just with cheese, and the south corner would be with toppings. And then I give them a minute or so to explain why that's the case. And they listen, and then I say, does anybody want to change their mind because of what they heard from the other side? And generally, you won't get anybody. And then I'll say, is that okay? Does it matter if one person likes pizza with cheese and one person likes pizza with toppings? Can we live in a world where people like differences like that? And the answer is yes. And then we do the same thing with sports. And they go into four corners of the room then. Somebody from each groups give a reason why they like that particular sport best. And you'll see some kids who'll say, well, I don't like any of those things. And so I'll say to them, well, then get in the middle and you'll have to tell us what it is that you like. And it's, again, just to frame this for them so that they realize that different people have different things that they care a great deal about. And that's really okay. Everybody doesn't have to have the same passion. All right. And then we move on to the actual meat of it. Okay. So in life, there are people who are leaders, and leaders have different personal qualities, and leaders often have different skills. So what we're going to do is to watch 4 young leaders, and what I would like you to do is to think about what it is that you see that are the leadership qualities of this particular person. And also, what is it about them that makes people want to follow them? So I'm also going to take an aside here. I have found when people work with middle schools and sometimes in high schools, because of the limit on the time that you have in a classroom, that using 4 minutes for these with the time in between to think about it takes up too much class time. So I highly recommend that if you have to cut it down, that you cut it down to 2, and that you choose one of the first 2 and you choose one of the last 2, because these are definitely left-leaning issues and these are definitely right-leaning issues. And you want to make sure that when you're in a classroom, you are not showing preference for either left or right political positions or personal positions. You're going to see all of them today. So we'll show Greta Thunberg first. Again, look for what is it about her that makes her a leader.
Greta, your first climate strike was a lonely event a little over a year ago, and in the intervening time you have sparked the interest of millions, literally, of children around the globe demanding action for climate change. What's your message to world leaders today?
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Okay, take a minute for yourself. And if you have a piece of paper around, you can write, what is it about her that makes you want to follow her? And what are some of the leadership qualities that you recognize in her? Okay, so as adults, you can see that somebody who doesn't believe in climate change might not have been very happy to listen to Greta talk about that and feel the emotional pull that she tends to have on groups when she speaks with them. And the same thing is going to be true when we use one of the more right-leaning people who are in favor of abortion, for example, are going to have a more difficult time listening to Kristen Turner. But the idea behind it that you want to reinforce, if you see this happening, if you see faces, showing a little bit of anxiety or animosity, is that people have different opinions, and that doesn't make them bad people. They are just different. So I'm going to show you Kristen Turner next, and then we'll go back to David Hogg and then on to Charlie Kirk.
When I look into this crowd, I know who you are. I know who you are because we were once all nearly the same. We were all once a single cell, and to the human perception identical. But nobody could predict how unique and how valuable we all are now and were as that single cell. Again, look at how far we have come. Yes. From that single cell into the concerned and compassionate people that are here today. Yet I know many of the faces I see here also carry pain. Maybe the pain of your friends and loved ones dehumanizing the preborn because they're just clumps of cells, right? Maybe the pain of a past abortion, wishing you could just go back and hold that child. Or maybe the pain of knowing that you have a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, or even a cousin who has been killed by this violent social institution under the guise of progress. This is not progress.
Okay, and again, what is it that makes people want to follow her? And what are some of the leadership qualities that you see in her? Okay, the next one is David Hogg, and you can assume that if you're in a relatively conservative area, that people are going to be more interested in gun rights than in gun control. So they're going to have a harder time listening to David, but here is what he has to say.
President Trump acknowledged Wednesday that gun deaths are a public health emergency, but he sent mixed messages on background checks in recent days. Now, some survivors of the February 2018 shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida are introducing their own plan for sweeping gun control legislation. Our Paula Reed spoke with David Hogg, a survivor of the shooting and one of the founders of the March for Our Lives movement. She asked him about the group's proposal.
What we're asking for is a gun licensing and registration system with annual licensing fees. What we're asking for is mental health services in our communities to address the 2/3 of gun deaths that are suicides in mainly rural and suburban areas that are never talked about when it comes to gun violence. And making sure that we're able to have a real conversation about making sure that the people that shouldn't have guns in the first place can't get them, and also reducing the overall demand and appeal for weapons and violence in the United States.
Okay, same thing with David. Why would you follow him, and what are some of his leadership qualities? And then the last one is Charlie Kirk. And the opposite side of that is more of academic freedom, that universities should be able to determine what goes on in their own spaces.
No, because I've heard you, Charlie, and many others talk about the liberal bias in academia, and I'm really curious, like, what is really driving that? Are students just generally, as Hassan was referencing earlier, more progressive and it's harder for conservatives to get elected? Or are there some other drivers that we need to know about?
There's nothing wrong with this, but people who are more liberal tend to go into academia. And I don't mean that as an insult or anything, it's just truth.
Yeah.
So that's why academia ends up being more to the left. The commentary we make and the reform where we say we want intellectual diversity and more representation, when you have a country that is split about 40-40 and then 20 in the middle, and academia is 90-10, there's something wrong with that. Now, I'm all for free speech and all. I'm not saying firing professors and all that, but I'm saying adding different perspectives, beliefs, and opinions, endowing different professors, different schools that are getting blocked by administration, especially in these different schools of business and finance. You should have an equal representation where people hear both sides of the argument.
Why would people follow him, and what are some of his leadership qualities? Okay, and then I'm going to ask each one of you just to share one of the things that you put down that you think is kind of opened your eyes a little bit. So Fran, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Greta was so passionate. She just, it looked like she was about to cry. And so she draws people into her emotion and is very credible with her skills of emphasizing her point. And that's a leadership quality that I think is important.
Thanks. Barbara?
let's see, who do I want to say? I think David, what did I write here? I thought he was very articulate, very clear message about what he's looking for. Can't read my own handwriting. This is great. He's very concrete. You know, what he said is, I just think he was very clear with his message. I don't know about anything else. I'm very articulate. Sometimes though, I've, gotten communications from him that I don't see that way, but I thought he did a really good job, and he's
Okay.
very clear.
Murray?
I thought both of the young women were very good at using emotions.
Yes.
And I was especially struck by, is it Katie, the second one, who kept involving the audience, that she was using a lot of we, which I think was effective.
Good point.
Rebecca? Rebecca, you're muted.
I noticed that they did give both more emotional speeches. Neither of them was afraid to speak truth to power, which I thought was impressive. And as far as the guys were concerned, and all of them actually, they stated their goals very clearly. As you said, they were articulate. They were well impressive.
Okay. Meg, how about you?
Well, I thought Charlie Kirk was pretty masterful in terms of his logic deliberation and using words that would appeal to both sides and finding middle ground right from every aspect of all of his message.
Sarah Beth, hi. You're muted. There you go.
Sorry I was late to the party, but here I am. Yeah, I agree with what everyone said. It struck me that the women used emotion and sort of a unity. This is all about us. We came through loud and clear. The two guys were very clear. They had very clear asks of what they wanted to do. Less emotional, but very forceful and articulate.
Okay, Sean, how about you?
Good morning, everyone. I feel like when I was watching Greta and David Hogg, that the authenticity of their personal experiences with Katie and Greta, they used emotion as shaming in a way to convince the listeners. All of them are good listeners, besides being good communicators. Let's see, what was something else? There was a sense of truth that came through. I felt, and this is my bias, but I felt the sense of truth more from what Greta and David Hogg were saying. And I think it's because they had some very personal experiences, whereas Katie, I don't know her life story. I don't know if she's experienced any pain from her own life experience, but she was using science and this sense of commonality between all of us, that we begin as cells, and it's what we think about those cells afterwards. I think that's it.
Annette, you'll have to look back at those videos and see what I was asking about in the beginning of the lesson. Now we've put in two things that help kids realize that people have different opinions about things that really are not red hot topics.
Yeah.
Then by recognizing that they have different opinions about that, they can also recognize that they have different opinions about red hot topics. and that we can all manage okay, as long as we listen respectfully and civilly to what someone else has to say. All right, so I'm going to go back to the slideshow now. All right, so we've gone through that. And this is what I would show if we were talking about the leadership qualities, but I wanted to see your faces. All right, so the next section is, so what's your issue? Is it jobs? Is it justice? Is it health? These are all things that have come from other young people like you. How about the environment? How about immigration or education or war? And then there are plenty of other things too. So just think for a second, what is your issue? Is there a cause that you would stand up for?
Me?
Anybody?
Okay. Well, for me, I've had involvement in most of those things, especially as a nurse who worked in state institutions, okay, and all the psychiatric hospitals. As a trauma nurse in Newark, I worked 7P to 7A. I saw the worst of the worst. If I didn't see it, it's because it didn't happen. So I've been involved in all those things and been an advocate. I was a nursing administrator of a group.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay.
What is that one issue that is behind all of those?
Justice. Justice.
Okay.
And healthcare.
That's what I'm looking for.
Healthcare. Many of our citizens are, as a visiting nurse, to go into communities where they didn't have any education. And because what the medical system has done to mostly our communities, they have no trust. They wouldn't go. They won't get to the doctor.
Yeah, I know that's really an issue. So healthcare and justice are two. So what we do here is we try to get the kids to narrow it down to just one. So if there's just one that one of the other people on the call today would say is the thing that they're most passionate about.
Justice for me.
Okay.
Mine's justice too, but also given just my own personal thing, is right now with the state of affairs is cruelty.
Okay. Anyone else? Maybe one more. Okay.
Reproductive health.
Okay. Okay, good. And there are others. Now, I'm going to try to do this. Let's see if I can, and we can do something that's a little bit fun. I am going to put a link in the chat. So we're all going to have our chats open.
I don't know if I know how to do that. Let's see.
Down at the bottom of your screen, there should be like a bar, and the center one says chat.
I see it. Thank you.
Okay, now I've just put a link there. So if you will click on that link, you'll be taken to that form that just flashed on your screen. It'll look like this.
Oh my goodness. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Can you get it, Barbara?
No, I think I lost your link. I'm sorry.
Are you in the chat? Do you see your chat box?
Well, yes, I see it. It says new chat. You would think I would know this by now.
No. Is there a link in that box?
No. Oh, what's your issue?
Yeah, it should be that.
Yes, it is.
Okay, click on it.
Okay.
It says poll leadership.
No, I tell you what, if you haven't found it already, just take a look on the screen with me. And Barbara, what would you have said? Can leaders exist if nobody follows them? So we've seen.
I have that. Yeah.
Oh, I don't have that.
Barbara, what's your answer?
Can leaders exist if nobody follows them? I would say no.
Okay. Who else had trouble?
Well, I say yes.
Okay.
Because then you have to learn, what are you not doing to lead them?
Who are they going to lead?
Is there anybody else who had a problem trying to get to the form?
I voted, I said maybe.
You just, all right. Did you click the link in the
Yes.
form? Okay. All right. So once we've done that, what I can do is I can go good. Everybody got it. I clicked on a little pencil form that was down there, and then I can look at the responses. So again, this goes back to that original thing. Do people have different opinions? And the answer is yes. I mean, some of the people here thought yes, some thought no, some thought maybe. In a classroom, again, I could either have the kids stand up, or sometimes I use sticky notes and I have them come up and then put their sticky note in a yes or no or a maybe column, just again to get them moving. Now I'm going to ask you, somebody who said yes, why did you say yes?
I said yes because I have, as a nurse, experienced that where, unfortunately, where I worked in the psychiatric hospital. Oh, okay. They didn't follow. The other nurses wouldn't get involved, and they wouldn't follow because they were abusing the patients, and I wouldn't let that. So I had to learn another way, and I reported the abuse because I had to, and when I went home, all 4 of my tires were sliced.
Wow.
So yeah, so what I did was call them in the room the next day, and I said, I don't know which one of you did it, I don't care, but let me tell you about me. I will never accept abuse of these clients. You have a key to go home every day. They don't. So let's work together. And if they make you angry, and I use the other layman's term, if they piss you off, let me know. You can get off the unit and go take a break. So they were surprised. They said, "Oh, you mean if they make us angry, you really let us go on a break?" I said, "Yes, I will."
Okay. How about somebody who said no? Why did you say no?
I said no.
Okay.
Primarily because I don't know that you could be an effective leader if there's nobody following you. It's like, you got to do some work first to get your followers and buy into your message, I think.
Okay. And how about somebody who said maybe? If you're speaking, you're on mute.
I just maybe because it's hopeful that maybe the word will get through at some point, even if they're not a leader at that moment.
Okay. So that's all of those responses are good. And what I ask the kids to do now, or I say to them, have any of you changed your mind? And in this exercise, usually there will be people who change their mind. And most of those will be either a yes or a no, and they'll move into the maybe group. But it also helps them to see that they can be flexible. They can change their mind if they want to. The next thing is leaders are only part of the picture. Who else is needed? And all of you have essentially, you've said that in the conversations that we've had. So what's going to come up right now is we also need supporters. Both leaders and supporters are needed to make change. They work together, and there are plenty of choices about actions that you can take at every single level. When people care about an issue, how can they get involved? Well, here are 2 possible actions. They might be really ambitious and they might lead a protest, or they can do something very non-threatening, like just discuss the news with somebody even that they agree with. But there are lots of other things that people can do as well that will help them take an action that might influence somebody to make a change. All right. In a classroom, I have sticky notes, and each kid gets a sticky note, and I ask them to write down one thing they think a person can do in order to make a change. And you'll get dozens of them. So right now, for yourself, just write down one thing that you think is an action that people can take to influence others to make a difference. Whoops, I don't want to do that. I want to get back and stop sharing. Was I sharing my screen?
No, I don't think so.
No, it didn't come up.
Okay. Hang on. All right, so this was the screen, and this is how it would appear to kids in the classroom. All right, and then with the sticky notes, this is usually projected on a whiteboard of some kind. So with the sticky notes, they can come up and they can actually stick them on one of those X's that's around there. If you can't project it that way, there's usually a chalkboard or something like that, and they can come up and they can put them there. In a situation like I was in a college lounge once, I just there was a table in the middle. They came up and they stuck them on the table. But again, it's the idea of getting them actively involved and physically involved in what's going on. So this is what you see when you're saying the words that are on the script. And then these X's come up. Right. And then the kids come up and they put their sticky note on that, or at least they organize them somewhere. And then the one that I always add is voting, because very seldom does that come up when the kids put down something that they can do. But each person has the chance then to share their ideas. So Fran, what's one thing you put down? Just one.
I always like to ask a question that I know is open-ended to get people to express themselves.
Okay. Rebecca, how about you?
I was thinking the same thing, Fran. I sometimes ask, why they have an opinion or where they get their information from to form that opinion.
Right.
I guess to be present and to speak up when there's something to say.
Sarah Beth?
I usually say something sarcastic. Bad response. I'm learning. I'll start with an open-ended question.
Okay. Sean?
Yeah, I think it's really important to be a good listener authentically. And I'm not sure if it was Francis, but someone mentioned it's important to ask other people questions. That you want to show true interest in who they are and what they're thinking. So that is how I would try to approach things, is first really be a good listener and then ask, questions to gain more clarity in what I thought I heard.
Okay. And Anna, is it?
I actually have to second Sean's comment that if you can listen, you will go a lot further in making inroads in trying to find common ground with another person.
Okay.
Annette? It's not easy, though, I have to say.
No, you're right. You're very right. Annette, how about you? What's one thing that you can do to influence people?
Okay, well, what I did, because I worked with people from all levels that understood, didn't understand, and I would ask them, what do you want to know? How can I help you? Okay. How can I help you understand? And they would say, well, when the doctor says this, I don't know what that means. Okay, here's what it means.
Barbara, how about you?
I think I really like this sarcasm response, actually. That's what I usually want to do. And, I think, being a good listener and showing some empathy and understanding of the person's position, they'd be more willing to hear your position as well.
Okay, well,
and
this
sarcasm.
Really interesting, because that is not what I ever get from kids. What I get from kids are things like use social media, make posters, take part in a protest, write a letter, all of those kinds of things that might be more traditional. I personally think that what all of you are saying is probably the most influential, but here we're talking with kids. And so that's a skill that they probably don't yet have. And it's one that we try to develop in our Across the Divide lessons. This is the slide. Now, some of you were not here right at the beginning.
I have lost you.
A young woman who is an art teacher and a member of the statewide Art Educators Association say, you know what? You really should have an outlet for those kids who are more artsy instead of more language oriented. And so she developed an entire lesson on using art to communicate the ideas and try to influence other people. This is a planning slide that I put in here mostly as an introduction to that idea. And then this second slide is a link to the actual full lesson. And I'm just going to show you the slideshow that she has here. So she has developed a pretty comprehensive lesson that helps kids who are more artistic plan and create something that is in line with whatever issue is theirs that they want to, and also evaluate their own work. So this is one place where I think it might fit. So keep that in mind, because I'm going to show you the other place too. All right, so now with kids, I want to make a difference. Where in the world do I start? It seems like such a huge task. Well, there are different levels that we can influence. So let's take the environment. Let's say you want to have a law created that makes it, that reduces the pollution in ocean waters. All right, that might be something that would happen on the national level. On the state level, you might have the same sort of thing done with bodies of water that exist within the state. You could do the same thing on the county level. You can do the similar thing on the municipal level. And even in your school district, you can do things that would help to prevent water pollution over the course of things. So once you get your issue in mind, you have to think pretty clearly about what your goal is, and then decide for yourself, all right, what level of government has some ability to make a change in that particular issue that I care about. There are different people who make different decisions. So at the national level, a president will sign a law, but it is the Senate and the House of Representatives that would actually be influenced by whatever you do. At the state level, it's similar. The governor would sign or not sign the law, and there is a Senate and Assembly, and both of those are tasked with creating the laws that affect people in the state. For us, it's New Jersey, so that's in Trenton. In cities and towns, there's also usually a mayor or a city or a town council, and usually all of those have a vote in whatever kinds of ordinances. And at the city and town level, they're ordinances, not laws, but they can be influenced as well. And then on the county level, in New Jersey, we have things called commissioners and clerks and sheriffs. They would be making the decision in their department about what happens on the county level. And then at the local level, we have school board members or, oops, I've got to change that. School board members yeah, lost my train of thought. School board members at the school level. Okay. Today, we're going to focus first on the national and the state level, but you are going to have a greater impact if you focus on something closer to home. Particularly as young people, people will be more likely to listen to you, even at the state level, than they will in Washington. How do you find out who those people are? Well, there is a way to do that. You can find your representatives at commoncause.com and state legislators. I clicked under find them here, and this is what came up, which is what you should have seen. So I'll change that. I'm going to put in my address so that you can see how it works. I submit that. And then what comes up is a list of all of those people who are my specific representatives at the federal, state, or local level.
Right.
So I have a ready access here to any one of those people because their phone number is there, their address is there, they've got a homepage, a Facebook, they've got a contact link there most of the time. So you can go directly from Common Cause when you've got something you want to influence somebody about and say, this is my opinion. You can go there and it's a pretty quick and efficient way to do it. You can also find out how people have voted by using Legiscan. This is a website that will allow you to search by state. So here's New Jersey. And you can search by subject. So if you're interested in, let's see, high school civics, which is one of my big things, you can just put in the text and it will search for you. And what will come up are the bills that are in the current legislative session that apply or that are close to what you're interested in. So the one that I am most interested in and I've been working on is the second one that's here. And this is in the Assembly. This is the second legislative session that this has been worked on, although it's not gotten very far. In this legislative session, it's only been introduced and it's been sent to the Assembly Education Committee, and that's where it's stuck. So if I want to influence that, what I need to do is go to the chairperson of the Assembly Education Committee. Then I would go back to using Common Cause. I would look it up. I would find out that Senator Vin Gopal in the New Jersey Senate is the head of that. And I can find out who the head of the Assembly is as well. And I would contact them. So that's a tool that we can teach kids how to use too, so that they can find out if there's already something in the works on a topic that they're interested in.
Pat, what was the link or the name of that again? Oh,
okay. Legiscan.org.
Okay.
And then / and your state will take you directly to your state.
Okay.
They'll even send you ongoing bills if you ask for them.
Yes, you can sign up to be notified if there's any action on the bill. Mm-hmm. And what I have found over the past 2 legislative sessions that you generally won't get a whole lot of action on anything until close to the end of the legislative session. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be working on it the whole time. And then one of the last things that I give the kids is that sometimes if you're going to be making a presentation, it's important to understand both sides of an issue so that you can make your pitch for your side, but you also can have ready answers for the arguments that might come back at you. So a starting point is one of those websites that has I think it's really pretty good. It gives you the first part. These are up at the top. There are topics that are pertinent today, and those things are recorded by one individual. So you have to look at whether they're left or right, or if they adhere to your point of view or not. But down here, and as you scroll through, there are dozens of these. If you get to an issue that you're interested in, like what's a red flag gun law, and you click on it, what you'll see is that there are 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans who have responded to that question in 1 to 2 minutes. So if a kid is interested in trying to get somebody to listen to them about what they think gun laws should be, hearing both sides of that issue can help them frame their argument a little bit better.
Pat, what is that website?
All right, oops. That's called A Starting Point.
Okay.
And this is, all of those links are in the slideshow, so you can go back and you can check them out yourself. Just remember that it is the find them here on that gets you to Common Cause, not the link on the first one. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now again, I mentioned that the kids are going to have more power to influence decisions on a more local level. And in the what's your issue, that I think is really helpful. So how do you know what's going on? Well, you have a couple of options. You can check municipal websites. And I was teaching in Asbury Park the last time I used this. So I actually linked I did it myself for my slideshow. I linked the Asbury Park community or municipal website to it. So the kids could actually see what it is you can find to about your thing. And what I mentioned to them too is you can actually go to public meetings. You can also hear or see the recording of those meetings. So if you miss a meeting, you can still find out what people were saying and thinking about. The same thing is true with Board of Ed websites. This one is not particularly good, Asbury Parks. It's kind of confusing, and there's a part that's still not even finished yet. So you would have to look at your own, at the town that you're going to yourself to decide whether you want to link something to the slideshow or not. But you can go to the public meetings, as I said, and if you can't get there, many of the meetings are virtual, so you can stay home and watch it on Zoom, or you can read the minutes, or as I mentioned, you can also now see video recordings of most of the meetings. You can also go to something that's called a work session. These are usually meetings that are held either immediately prior to the general meeting or on a day prior to the general meeting. Those are not necessarily advertised, but most often they are. At a work session, you can't speak, but you can listen. And that will give you some insight into the thinking of the members of that board. So when you're trying to frame your argument about why you want to see the change you want to see, you can use what you've learned there to help you frame that argument. All right, so then it's a question of what will you do? Most people fall somewhere in between being a strong leader at any level, whether it's international all the way down to school, or somebody who is more comfortable supporting a leader. To make change, they're both needed. You get to decide on your own level of engagement, and that will change over the course of your life. When you're a student, you have time that you can get involved in school issues. When you're a young parent, you're not going to have a whole lot of time. When you retire, like me, you may have more time, and then you can put more energy into it. But anything you do, any actions that you take can be helpful and can make a difference. So let's think back to the young leaders in those video clips. How effective do you think Greta would be if she tried to address not just climate change, but also Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ plus issues? How effective would Kristen be if she tried to address pro-life policies and gun rights and free speech on college campuses? Do you think Greta and David and Kristen and Charlie Kirk have experienced satisfaction? And I pause and you'll see heads nod. Excitement, a feeling of power. Do you think they've also faced frustration, anger, or other emotions that test their well-being? All of those feelings are normal, but some of them can get us to really go down a dark hole, and they make our world seem pretty. They ask kids, what are some of the things that you can do if you recognize that you're starting to see the world pretty darkly? And there will be things like, talk to your friends or talk to your parents or write in a journal, or some of those things have come up before. And then I say, but let's look at two other young people who have been role models for good mental health, and pretty recently too. Naomi Osaka is a tennis player who stood up for Black Lives Matter and got a lot of press coverage that she found very difficult to handle. Simone Biles is a gymnast who has ADHD, and she was on medication which she was not permitted to take if she was going to participate in the Olympics. Around the same time, she also hit something that gymnasts sometimes happen called the twisties, when she lost the sense of where her body was in space. So she had a physical and an emotional issue that she had to deal with. And she actually backed out of competing in the Olympics to take care of herself first. Now, we can look up to them for what they did, but another important thing to remember is they are both back in the game now. So you back up when you need to, you take care of yourself first, and then you can get back in the game when you're ready. And you can do that with confidence, because remember what we said about everybody having different issues? Well, some of those other people also have the same issue that you have, and they will have the chance to continue working while you take care of yourself. And then when you get back in the game, you are actually doing the same thing for somebody else who might have had a similar problem. So, what's your issue? Well, students have made a difference in some laws. At the federal level, there were students in Montana who, as youth, got a climate ruling passed. In the state of New Jersey, there is a relatively new law, it's about 2 years old now, that has given middle and high school students permission to have an excused absence annually in order to participate in some kind of civic engagement. And at the municipal level here in New Jersey, Vote 16 New Jersey has passed in the city of Newark, one of the poorest cities in the state. And young people 16 years old and older are now permitted to vote in school board elections in the city of Newark. So those are things that came about because of kids' actions, not necessarily adults' actions. I'm sure there were adult mentors, but those things passed because of the engagement of kids. You can make a difference. And if you have time in the class, I'm just going to show you the first couple of seconds, but there is a story here by a woman who talks about the fact that she started being active when she was.
By the time I was 15, I had been jailed 9 times. I was born in Selma, Alabama in the 50s.
So begins the story of Linda Blackman Lowry, the youngest person to participate in a voting rights march from Selma to Montgomery in 1965. She wrote a book about her experience, turning 15 on the road to freedom. But her journey for civil rights began much earlier and was motivated by a painful experience at just 7 years old.
When my mother died, I heard older people say, if she wasn't colored, she could have been saved. But the hospital was for whites only. My mother died as a result of her skin color. So racism hurt my family. It hurt me.
Years later, when the civil rights movement came to her hometown of Selma, and Miss Lowry heard Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak, she didn't quite understand the importance of voting rights. But his message still resonated because through it, she saw a way to fight the racism that had claimed her mother's life.
Okay, and I'm going to let you watch the rest of that yourself. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Before we go on to the next one, which is I Am the Change, which is really the very practical stuff about how do you do this? How do you make it happen? What are some of the questions or comments that you might want to make about this?
I have something. The one today we're specifically focused in on high schoolers. You have to excuse that. And so they're the ones that can navigate to get to Legiscan and things of that nature. I liked the bottom one that can be clicked on. I'm just not sure about that slide, depending on the environment that you're in teaching.
Oh, the story that, the ending story there?
No, it was one of the slides where you had the three options where they're figuring out. I'm just thinking it through in my head.
Which slide?
Yeah,
Are you talking about the, both sides? Where there's an issue like gun rights and there are three people who
No,
are.
that one I got. It was when the one that had you had the opportunity to click on Legiscan.
Oh,
So that's all.
what's your concern about that?
Well, see,
Let me go back to it.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to. I can explain to the group. I'm getting ready to prepare for a group of young individuals who are in home in yeah, that one. Yeah, I need to think about that one.
Right. So what is your concern about it?
Well, my concern is in October, Annette and I will be involved with conducting sessions for youth that are in residential applications,
Yeah.
residential homes. And so I have to think through, they don't have accessibility to the internet and stuff. And so I would not use, I just have to evaluate how that gets used.
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up, Fran.
Yeah.
I didn't mention it today, and there are
Yeah.
new people on today, but
Yeah.
no matter what lesson of ours you're using, you have to do exactly what Fran is saying.
Yeah.
Think through it,
Yeah.
decide what will work with the community that you're
Yeah.
working with at that particular day, and what you need to just not use, or
Exactly.
what you need to add to it in order to make it more personal for the kids in that group.
Yeah.
So that's a really good comment, Fran. Thank you very much for making that.
No, thank you.
Could I get some clarity from Francis?
Sure.
Francis, are these high school young people or older?
They're middle school and lower high school, I believe, and so they're in residential locations, and they're in secure environments and not real secure environments, and it's called the Youth Justice Commission.
Oh.
And so we are going to be, along with Annette, who's here today, and Barbara, who's here today, conducting sessions for the students. And we have to be really aware of them as our audience and make sure that everything that we are presenting is appropriate. Everything's, so I have that thinking, that's the thinking cap I'm wearing today. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, because we have to make sure, depending on where we're at, is this right for this group? Is this slide right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what I experience a lot is people will ask me, other organizations will ask me, why don't I make a video? Why don't I do social media? And when I go to the county jail, there's no such thing. It's me talking to them, and giving them as much information as I can. And the parole facilities, there is no social media. So just like what Fran was saying, what you gave us, Pat, is really wonderful for us to look that up, and maybe from there correlate the information and give it to them. And see what we can do with it.
That is the role of the adults in this situation. Barbara's
Yeah.
going to be a great resource to you too, because she's been there a long time, right, Barbara?
Very long time.
Yeah. Good. Anna?
Hi. So one, not for an incarcerated population, but for those individuals who are still going to school, there are computers at school, and I would think that these sites would be approved sites for them to go to. And that, well,
in
school situations, in high schools, and they can also go to their county libraries. If they're not incarcerated people, I'm not speaking to that particular population. I understand that that is a population that doesn't have access. But then, so my question is should we, for this kind of information, is that printed out? Is there material that's printed out that contains that information for us to give out as handouts? Or are people just supposed to be taking notes about that information? How's that part supposed to work?
Really good question. There are some things on the website that are already pre-printed that are accessible. You can always make up those kinds of handouts if you think that for your population it's going to be important. Just be careful, because just from my experience, I know that many times printed things just get thrown in the trash, way out the door. It might be more practical to have each kid write something down that they can share on social media or something like that that is appropriate. Just getting them actively involved while you're in front of them, I found, makes it stick better than having something that they walk away with. But
actually, I was just thinking you could offer to have them take, because again, in a public high school, most kids have phones. And so they could take a picture of that information too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Where they're allowed to have their phones while they're in class.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have found that I have to ask the teacher ahead of time if that's the case, so that I can adjust the way I teach the class. But that's all fine too. I've also found that there are teachers who will create worksheets for their kids afterwards that will follow up on the material that has been presented. And that's really good, because they know their kids best. They're the ones that I wish that we could get every one of them teaching it all the time. We've actually been successful with that in some school districts. The district in the town where I live now uses every single one of our modules sometime during the course of the kids' school careers. Most of it in middle school, because we now have a state law that requires civics to be taught in middle schools. That's one of the reasons why I'm really interested in that law in high school, because that is for juniors in high school. And when we get into the next lesson, I can expand on that more and show you what kinds of things I'm working on. All right, so differs. I mean, we have different states from across the country here today, and so that's going to differ. And it's also going to differ with whether you're a local league or whether you are a state league that's represented.
Yeah.
You can check into that and see if there's a way to get things printed professionally.
Yeah.
That would be good. All right, the second lesson for today is the I Am the Change. And it's the same thing. You click on the little plus sign, you go to the view module. Again, you'll see that there's a high school and a middle school version. And I'm going to show you the slide strip or the film strip for the middle school version, because I want to show you where the difference is between the two in this section. Also, if you take a look at it, you'll see some stuff that looks very familiar. Remember, I said this is a combination of the What's Your Issue and the and the I Am the Change. So this is where I Am the Change begins, and it's with the essential question of how do you actually do this? When we get to how do you do it, if they're in middle school, we actually teach them how to write an email, a formal email to go to their legislator, or in this case, to a school board. And then we have them do that themselves for the issue that is theirs. But you'll see when we get to the high school that it is much more complex. You'll also see that there are some extras here. And this one we're going to use as we go through the lesson. This one is, again, that sheet that I showed you before about what kids have actually been able to accomplish that we know of here in New Jersey. So you've got that as a resource too. This is Washington State. Again, their materials have been adapted and they're wonderful. So if you are from another state and you want to see how Washington has done it, please take a look at their things. And here is the high school and college. You were talking about some extra materials. This is a tip sheet. How do you contact your legislator? And it talks, the things are bolded. And then there's an explanation for the kids. I sometimes hand those out, not always. But here is the actual slideshow. Right. Again, if you're beginning, all of these early slides look somewhat familiar, but this is where we start with the with the high school and college kids. So the essential question today is, how do you exercise your power and your knowledge to create change in our society, whether you're a leader or whether you're a supporter? And the goal for today is to give you the know-how and the tools to begin to make change. The definition of civic action is things people do to bring about social and political change. And that can mean anything from registering and voting through much more dramatic actions like planning a demonstration or participating in a nonviolent civil disobedience action. Civic action is a process, and you'll learn how the process works. Civil action requires a plan, and you'll learn today how to make one. And the acronym IAM the Change neatly becomes I am, and we've just added the words the change. So what does IAM stand for? The 3 basic steps in your plan. The I stands for informing yourself. The A stands for taking action. And the M stands for maintaining, and that is what happens after the fact. All right, so let's look at the I first. Where can you find accurate, reliable information? And where should you exercise caution? First, you're going to inform yourself to get facts and figures. You want to learn to state the problem as clearly as possible. And you want to learn as much as you can about the solution that you think is best, and then gather evidence that will help to support your position. And making it something that's observable so you actually can see when it's done is really, really important. Once you've got that, then you can inform others, or you can join others who are already working on what you're doing. So let's go back to that question. How do you determine what's reliable? And the other part of that is bias always bad? There are a couple of resources that you can look to. The All Sides website is one place you can go. And this is an example of the way that they've arranged their opinion about the bias of fact-checking websites. So if you are going to fact-check something, you want to know if there is a bias in that. If you look down the middle, these are the fact-checking sites that they believe are the most centrist. If you look a little to the left, you'll see others that tend to lean a little left when they make their decision. And when you look to the right, you'll see a little bit to the right. And then when you look far to the left and far to the right, you'll see the most extreme. Now, all of the ratings on the All Sides fact check, or actually on all of the things that they do, they are not reflecting the accuracy of what's said on that site or the credibility. All they're doing is telling you which way the ratings tend to lean. They're based on the content of those fact checks only. There are also All Sides media bias ratings that are based on a multi-partisan scientific basis. And you can visit allsides.com for balanced news, and you can view over 2,400 different rated sources. And just so you can see what this looks like. Oh, sorry. They're going to take us a few seconds to make sure I'm a human being. Okay, so you can look down the site and you can see some of the topics that they support. And then some of the ratings that they've made on sources that you're probably pretty familiar with. And I'm only going to do what you can see here, but ABC News, they feel is a little bit to the left. BBC is centrist. Breitbart is much to the right. BuzzFeed is much to the left. Christian Science Monitor to the left, and so forth. And then they also ask you to respond. If you don't agree with that rating, you can tell them that you don't agree with it, and then they'll figure out why, or they'll come to you with why.
Quick question, Pat.
Yes.
I was reading an article a week or two ago, and it was talking about the issue of left and right, and it had to do with the fact that over a certain period of time, like the last few decades, the United States has shifted so much to the right that now when we talk about what's left, center, or right, it's really rather skewed. So what we are looking at as too far to the left, if we lived in Europe, that would be considered centrist. So we use the all sides. I totally believe in the Literacy Project. But I found that really interesting, especially in line with, when we're using something like this chart.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why I recommend using two. All Sides Bias Checker tends to be more right-leaning, I think. And the other one that we use will tend to be more left-leaning. But again, like you said, it really depends on your context, whether it's left or right. So you have to keep that in mind. The reason that we use, I tend to use the other one, it's Ad Fontes Media, and I'll show you that in a second, is because they also rate according to accuracy and reliability, not just left and right lean. But I wanted to show you this too, because this is on All Sides Bias Checker. So let's say you're reading an article in the New York Times, something like that, and you want to check to see if there's bias in that. You can actually click on the URL and you can insert it in here, and they will check the bias for you or tell you if it's been rated, what the bias on that article is. So that's the second link that's down there. You can play around with that on your own. This is the Ad Fontes Media Bias Chart. And like I said, this is the one that I like to use because it rates from left to right like All Sides does, but it also rates from top to bottom. So at the top, you're getting fact reporting. You're not getting any opinion at all. And so the closer to the top that you get, the more fact-based it is. As you begin to move down, you start to get a mix of fact reporting and analysis. And then it moves down to analysis or a wide variation in the reliability of the facts that they're using. And then as you go on down, you get down to where it contains inaccurate information or fabricated information. When I said, is bias always bad? I tell kids that it's not, because when they are creating an argument, they need to know what both sides are. That's what you do in debate. You prepare as though you are arguing both for and against something. And so if you can do that when you're also trying to get something done that you think should be done, you've got the answers to their challenges to you. But let's look a little bit more closely.
Ooh, I like that one.
This is the top box. You can see the green box there, and you can see in the center the way it has come down. So it has cleared out a lot of the noise that's there. And these are things that most of us I think are probably pretty familiar with. So you can see better how they do them. In order to place something on this chart at all, and they don't do just print media, they do podcasts, they do TV shows, they do cable news, it's much broader than just the print that you might see in a newspaper. And it also has a search bar or a search on the actual app so that you can find what you want. And it is free. And I'll show you the QR codes for it if you want to take a photo of it and find them yourselves. And get the app on your phone so you can check this in real time. But at any rate, now I've lost my train of thought. But at any rate, what you can do is you can see, all right, if I'm arguing about gun control, I'm going to look at the central sources of information and get as much fact-based information as I can about what's going on in the world and how is the gun control, gun rights argument going now. But I'm also going to look down at some of these pretty more extreme positions, because those are the kinds of arguments that you're going to get back. And so you're going to be better prepared if you see those things. Here, I've blown it up even more so you can see some of the individual things that didn't show up on the last chart.
So, Pat, I have a question or a thought, actually. I have seen this before, and I love it. And I love AP, and it's so nice to see it when it's at the top.
Yes.
But I am kind of confused by the Fox 11. But what I wanted to say was, in thinking about yesterday's lesson and how we did the cards for why I don't vote, or the reasons people give for not voting.
Yeah.
And I wonder if something similar could not be created with this, coming up with questions relevant to what you were just mentioning, and then tie it into this chart, because people have thoughts about whether it's factual or not factual. It's just a thought.
Think about that. And I'm going to task you with that. Think about it more completely, and then either try it with one or two things yourself and send them to me, and I will share them with other people. And maybe you got something there. I like the idea. Okay, these are the QR codes for that Ad Fontes Media. I'll just leave that up for a second if you want it. Download it to your phone.
Did you put that back for a second?
So, Pat, that is all in the slides.
Yes.
So, yeah. I have a question. Of course, crediting the LWV in Monmouth for the slide, but could we use these two QR codes?
Yes. Yeah, that's not ours. That's yours.
Okay, perfect. I love this, that you can app it on your phone.
Right. All right. There is a slide that I have hidden, but you can see that there's a 4-minute video that discusses how they actually determine those scores. It's a very nonpartisan method. They've got to use like 10 different sources, and it's got to be the tan or red by somebody who's left-leaning, somebody who's right-leaning, somebody who's centrist, and they all have to agree on where it is actually placed in that chart. And that kind of review goes on constantly. So it's always up to date. So, so then the next part moves into there ought to be a law. I want you to think back to what was your burning issue. And let's pretend that you've done all your research and you have a really clear idea in your mind about what needs to change. And you can back up your view with facts and figures from reliable sources, and the positions that have been expressed by the left and the right and the center. So with that knowledge, let's state what you would like to see in a law as clearly as possible. So what exactly do you want to see once the legislative process is finished? And we're going to have a little bit of fun brainstorming this. So let me go back to the slideshow. All right, we're going to act. We're going to do the frame your statement. What do you need to say? And I'm going to do this on the screen for you, but I'd like you to think about your own issue, and I'd like you to do the same thing with your issue on a piece of paper where you are. All right. So I mentioned to you that my goal is to get a civics course in high school. All right. And I showed you that there was actually a law or a bill under consideration in the New Jersey State Legislature for that. All right, so this is the very general statement. There needs to be a civics course in high school. Okay, I need to think about that more clearly. So sure, I could see that if it was done, but I really want it to be more specific, because if I'm talking about in high school, one of the things that I am concerned about is that in high school in New Jersey, kids can drop out when they're 16. And there are many kids, particularly in lower income communities, who need to go to work to support their family. And so they don't graduate, they don't get their senior year. So I don't want it to just say in high school. I want it to be very specific and say in junior year, because that's going to catch most of them. Most of them will be under 16 during that year. Okay, I want a civics course. Well, what the heck do I mean by that? Do I want it to be up to each individual teacher to make a decision about what is civics, or do I want it to be more specific? So when I'm talking about civics, I want it to be a course that helps youth understand the importance of voting and civic engagement. And I want them to have the skills to carry out both actions during, well, it's a misplaced modifier, but at any rate, that's what I want. So more than just a civics course, I want to be really specific and really clear about what I want to see. And I want to make sure that there is a time limit. So during one semester of their junior year in high school, because in New Jersey, the law is that you have to have history or some kind of social studies the first 3 years that you're in school, but not the last. And so what we're doing by asking for this is saying, okay, a chunk of that junior year curriculum is going to be taken out in order to put the civics in. But this is what I want to see. Maybe it will be changed, but this is what I want to see, and I'm willing to start there. So I'd like you to take your statement, your issue, and try to do the same thing. Take a minute or two to try to flesh it out and make it as specific and as visual as possible, what you want to see at the end. Sometimes it helps you to ask yourself, why do I want this?
There's too many things I want.
Right. And one of the things that I have found when I'm working with kids is that this could take a long time. So once about 2 minutes has gone by and they've had a chance to really begin thinking on their own, I ask them to turn to pair and share. So they turn to one other person and they share where they are at that point in their thinking, and they ask for positive feedback. What do you understand and what isn't clear in what you've written down? So if anybody is brave and would like to share theirs, we can do that for you. Normally I would put you into groups, into breakout rooms of 2 and 2, but the time is flying.
Oh, it really is. My goodness.
I can go.
Thank you.
It's funny, Pat, when you gave us this little assignment, and my original thing was I wanted, more justice. And all of a sudden it came to me that, well, that's sort of broad. And how do I, it was a bit of a stumbling block about how do I do this? But I eventually navigated my way through something, and here's my something. I want a more just society in order to assure that all people are treated fairly across the social, political, economic, and cultural aspects of life. In I guess I'm just going to leave period.
Okay, good. All right. That is much clearer than justice, for sure. What is something that makes that some of the others of you felt is clear and you would know exactly what Sean wanted?
I don't know what the law is, though. What, Sean, what is I know what your hope and desire is. What would the law be?
What would the law be? Oh, good question. I guess I would have to ask you, what do you mean by what would the law be?
So what's enforceable? You have a hope and desire.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's a huge endeavor. One is hoping at this point that the laws that we create as people that rule us are going to be more just and fair to everyone. But we now know that's not true. Supposedly law is supposed to be more rational. But because we're human beings, we get caught up in our irrational, emotional state. So to create a society that is just across all that spectrum of social, political, economic, and culture, one has to definitely believe that you can make just laws that assure that. So yeah, a good question, Francis, and it is way bigger than my little brain.
And actually, Sean, what you did was to create your why statement. Why is this important to you?
Okay.
And that's the place where you're starting from. And
Okay.
then you can drill down and drill down and drill down until there's one thing that you are the most passionate about that you're going to put some time and effort into working with your legislature to make happen. Okay, Sarah Beth, you have your hand up.
Oh, I really thought that was a great question and a great response because I really saw the wheels turning. And I confronted the same process with my thing, but I hearken back to my early special education training of, writing objectives that are observable. And if you think about what's it going to look like, there will be no lines at the polling places or, whatever it's going to look like.
Right. And then you try to draft the language that you think will help frame a law or a bill, and you can move from there. Anybody else want to share?
I will.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I would like a national assault weapons ban for all individuals other than members of the military or law enforcement.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on whether that's clear or whether you know what it's going to look like when it's done?
Very clear.
We had one once.
Okay. Was there anything unclear about what Rebecca wants, do you think? Anything that she could polish up a little bit?
What about the Second Amendment?
Well, that's where you need to have the arguments in your mind that are from the other side so that you are prepared when somebody says that. And that's perfect. You couldn't have played it better there. And I didn't even pay her to do that. So, okay. So you have the idea and you do this with the kids to try to help them see if you're going to do something that's achievable, you have to be able to see it. You have to know what you're going to see at the end of it, whether that's on the local level or whether it's, beyond that. So that was my fun. Okay, and then you have to try to involve others in your actions. The next part of it is how, once you've got that clear in your mind, how can you inform your legislators or your elected officials about what you want? And this is, I'm only going to show you a part of this again because of time, but this is made by one of our young people way back in the beginning.
Hey guys, my name's Justin. I'm here with St. Edward's University telling you a little bit about contacting your elected representatives. The first thing you need to do is find out who your representatives are. To do that, there's a lot of great websites online, like the one at Common Cause, where you can type in your address or even just your zip code, and they'll tell you all your representatives in the government, whether that be the president all the way down to your local railroad commissioner. After that, you need to figure out who to contact based on your issue. For instance, you wouldn't contact a state representative about immigration policy because that's a federal issue. They can't really do much about that. So you just need to do a little poking around online to figure out where your issue falls on the spectrum, if it's federal, state, or local. After that, you need to decide on the method of communication. Usually the best ones to do are phone calls and letters. A phone call shows that you're interested. If you call in, you might even be given to a full-time staffer that handles the issue, and you could have an informed conversation with them about it. And a letter shows that you took the time to sit down and physically write out your problems, and it's more likely to get you on the office's radar as a concerned citizen.
I like that.
Okay, so, and he goes on. So, but it kind of reinforces the things that you've already covered in the lesson, as well as give you some reasons, like why are these two things important? The other thing, this is the sheet that I showed you in the beginning that is available on the website. This is also a link to it, so you can find that more easily. And then this is the link to Common Cause so that you can find your legislator. I like the fact that he talks about thinking about what level it is. So if you think back to what you just wrote, what level would you need to go to in order to have the kind of change that you want to see? Mine, for example, is the state of New Jersey. What's yours? Anybody?
Mine is state or national, because I want 16-year-olds to be able to have the right to vote.
Okay.
Mine's national.
Mine is state and national too, because I want to have people not only in New Jersey to vote while they're incarcerated, but citizens in other states who cannot vote because they committed a felony.
Okay. One more.
Mine is state reproductive issues are largely state at this point, but I would like to take them also to the national level.
Okay. All right. And then it's a really good point to make that where are you most likely to have the greatest impact? And what do you think the answer is?
Local.
Local, right. Your state is much more likely to take action than the federal government is, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't work towards getting it at the federal government. Right. If you do it at the state level, you've got a lot of practice. So, and then you can learn how to lobby at the federal level. Whoops. Okay. So you know what you want to say, you know the person you need to say it to or the level, and then what? All right. Then you're going to sit down and the young people, you're going to have them actually write the beginning of a letter or an email that you could send to the representative that you've looked up on Common Cause. And once you've given them maybe 3 to 4 minutes, then you do the same thing you did before. Do a pair and share so they can share with one another. And you ask them to give a positive comment first. What is really clear? What are you saying that I just totally understand? And then one suggestion, not negative, but a suggestion or a question like, what did you mean by? whatever. And then you give them another minute to make some changes in their in the beginning of their letter, and they're not going to get the whole thing done during this lesson. But if you can talk to the teacher, you really encourage the teacher to help them finish up. And then once all is that is done, you can say, okay, so now what? We have a couple of different ways that you can either yourself teach the kids on how a bill becomes a law, or you can leave with the teacher if the teacher is interested and willing to take them on a deeper dive. But I'm going to show you two of the, I will show you one thing first. We have a script and a whole thing about what happens to your bill, but there are two other options available for you. One of them is a pilot program that was written by a digital learning company. And it's available to people who work with us. It's not available nationally. But this is, let me see if I can find the right spot to start. All right, there.
Welcome to this digital learning experience presented by Legal.
All right, there is a menu down the side. And what you want is to get to the time to act, creating a bill.
Remember, you can influence the outcome by staying vocal. You need to make sure you communicate. Contact your representative to sponsor your bill. Your legislator will research the issue and come back with an answer. If the representative disagrees, then you go back to the drawing board to do more research and try a different approach.
And I have an example that I give to them. That civic day off for civic engagement. Our kids, the 2 legislative sessions ago, they asked for the same thing. It totally flopped. And then there was a brainstorming session. What did we do wrong? And they reframed the whole thing. They got additional sponsors. And then
if the legislator agrees with your proposal, the 2 of you move forward. The legislator agrees with your proposal. Now what? Your legislator will now find sponsors for the bill.
And these are things that the students can do to help.
A committee is assigned to your bill and it goes up for debate. During all of this, you stay vocal and encouraging. Prepare testimony. Provide questions. Write letters to news editors. Attend hearings. Wear buttons, stickers, and t-shirts. You get the idea. So, the bill makes it out of committee. Now what? When the committee has approved or amended the bill, it goes back to the Senate or General Assembly for the second reading. After this, it is up to the Senate President or Assembly Speaker to schedule a debate and vote on the bill. Then a vote is taken. Bills at the federal and state level have to be approved in both chambers, the House and the Senate. Bill approval requirements at the state level vary. Sometimes the bill is submitted in only one chamber. It goes through the whole process in that chamber. If it started in the House and passes, it now goes to the Senate for the same process there. If it started in the Senate, it now goes to the House. Sometimes similar but not identical bills are submitted to both chambers at the same time. If there are 2 versions of the bill, the differences between them need to be ironed out in a conference committee. Once it passes both chambers, you're almost at the finish line. While the bill is on the floor, you can provide talking points or draft and distribute a very brief floor letter outlining your key points. Keep an eye on things and use pressure when and where needed. You can nudge if action is dragging. Yay! It passed both chambers, so now it's a law. Right? Not quite yet. Here's what may happen. The president or governor may sign the bill. Hooray! It's a law. The president or governor may veto the bill. Read what can happen if it's vetoed.
And then there's a link there.
Or the president or governor can do nothing. At the federal level, if the president doesn't sign the bill, it doesn't become law. In some states, it becomes a law. In others, it dies.
And unfortunately, this link is now a dead link, but I'm sure that I haven't looked it up myself, but I'm sure there's a website that we could ask them to link there.
If you do not get your wish, you still have the power. Communicate publicly. Organize a demonstration. Send letters to the editors or run press releases. Select the Maintain sign to continue. Our last step, Maintain, means keep an eye on things and use pressure when and where needed. You can nudge using ResistBot if action is dragging. Once the action is accomplished, that is not the end of the story. You will need to follow up to make sure the action was effective. If it was effective, be sure to thank everyone who helped. If your action was not effective, you will need to go back to informing yourself why and determining the next action. Don't give up. Remember, civic action is a process. It's your turn now. Let's review to be sure you know what to do to make a civic action plan. Remember, I is for inform. A is for act. M is for maintain. IAM. First, inform. Hit the facts and figures, state the problem clearly, and state the solution you want to see. Next, act. Determine what and how you need to say and who needs to hear it. Lastly, maintain. Avoid losing ground by ensuring that the change you want to see is observable. Think about what the next steps are. Be the change you want to see.
Actually, the whole thing is the entire lesson. So if you're interested in just using that interactive, it's asynchronous, so the students can use it on their own, and the teachers sometimes think that's a great idea, or the teacher or you can use it and ask, you can pace it at your own pace. I just let it go through the way it wanted, but let's say you wanted to find out more about vetoes. So you can stop the whole thing there. You can click on the link. You can find out about vetoing a bill and move on when you're ready to move on. The other thing we have is a student created video. This was made the summer before last by a young girl who got a grant from Duke University to create 3 videos on the state of New Jersey and the legislative process there. So this is specific to New Jersey, but I think it's a model that those people here and other states might want.
Right, so we got legislative sessions. Now, how does a bill get passed? It's a long, tedious process in many places that a bill can be killed or stopped in its tracks. But let's get into it. The process of passing a bill at the state level is pretty similar to passing it at the federal level. And to understand how a bill gets passed, you really need to understand the key people involved in this process. The bill must be introduced by a legislator from either house. And when I say house, I don't mean like a home. I'm actually referring to either one of the 2 legislative houses, either the Senate or the General Assembly. So, back to step 1. The idea for the bill may come from the legislator themselves, or a suggestion from a constituent, an interest group, or even the governor. Then the Office of Legislative Services, a nonpartisan agency that works with legislators, helps them draft the bill language, making sure it fits with all the legislature's formatting. So before I can move forward any further, let's talk about what co-sponsors are and prime sponsors are of a bill. So pretty much every bill has co-sponsors. It's almost like signing a petition. Legislators from that house can sign on in support of the bill. And every bill has a prime sponsor. And they have a lot of special responsibilities and one fun fact. Both houses allow for a second prime sponsor as well, and the General Assembly sometimes even up to 4. Okay, so we have sponsors and co-sponsors down pat. Before a bill can be passed in a single house, it has to be read 3 times. So before a bill can be read, the prime sponsor must deliver it to the Secretary of the Senate or the Clerk of the Assembly. This is step number 3. The Clerk and the Secretaries are basically elected members from each house who oversee the basic operations to make sure the legislative sessions run smoothly. So a bill is formally introduced, also known as its first reading, when the Clerk or Secretary reads its assigned number, its co-sponsors, and title at a session. This is usually step number 4. Then the Senate President or the Assembly Speaker, depending on the house you're in, will usually refer the bill to one of the House's many committees for reference. So, who are the Senate President and the Assembly Speaker? I'm happy you asked. They are the functioning heads of their respective house, with a lot of unique power and responsibilities. They alone, through action or inaction, can stop nearly any measure from passing. Here are some of their special responsibilities. They strategically refer bills to committees. They decide on meeting schedules and which bills can be heard. They preside or stand over legislative sessions. And they appoint committee chairs and members. So, what's a committee? There are a number of committees in each house covering a wide range of topics. For example, the Committee on Agriculture, on the Environment, or Transportation. The idea is that legislators with interest or expertise in these areas are put in these committees. For the bill to move forward at this point, the chair must schedule the bill for a hearing, and then there will be a public hearing on the bill. However, it is in this stage that many bills die or do not move forward. At this hearing, individuals, lobbyists, and public interest groups can come and testify in support or against the bill. So after the hearing, the committee will vote on the bill, if they want to move forward or not. If the committee reports the bill, meaning they think it's a good idea, then it is given to the secretary or clerk of that given house. And it can be reported with or without amendments, meaning that they changed the bill in some way. Generally speaking, now that the bill is moved out of committee, it will be given its second reading. The second reading occurs at a general session of that house, and at this point the bill can still be amended. You can begin to see how long of a process this is. And remember, at each step of the process there are opportunities for the bill to be stopped and not move forward any further. Only a fraction of the bills that enter the House get out. Once the Senate President or Assembly Speaker schedules the bill, the third reading occurs. If you remember, this is the final reading. Finally! This is when the final debate occurs, and the bill is voted on by the entirety of that House. For most measures, it's just a simple majority vote, either 21 senators or 41 Assembly people. Whew! So you thought that was a lot? It was, but now the bill must go through the same entire process in the other House. And if any amendments are made at this point forward, it has to go back to the original House as well. This is because before the bill can be moved to the governor, both houses must have passed the same version of the bill. Finally, we're back to the governor. So the governor has a few options. They have a lot of power here. The governor can sign the bill into law, fully veto the bill, or even just veto specific lines of the bill. And if the legislature wants to override the governor's veto, they can, and with a 2/3 or supermajority vote, just like in Congress. Okay, wow, that was a lot, but hopefully it was helpful. As we wrap up, here's a recap of the 10 steps to get a bill passed. I'll see you in our next video about the state government system, talking about how you, as a young person, can get involved.
Did a great job.
Isn't that amazing? When she finished that, I thought, I just learned something.
Really, I just loved watching it. It was just really, yeah. Wonderful.
So anyway, you have three choices when you get to this point. You can use any one of those. And even with the video, Margaret speaks very quickly, but you can stop the video at any point and stop and talk to the kids about what has gone on and ask questions and so forth. So there's lots of choices there. But the important thing, I feel, is to get them to actually write something, get them to do the work so that they realize that they can. If you do it once, you realize, all right, I can do that. It's really not that hard. Our ambassador program takes the kids even further, and we have had kids learn how to write testimony, and then we have taken them to Trenton and they have actually testified. And I will tell you that people who sit on those committees, their eyes open up and they sit up straight when they see young people come up to that microphone and talk to them about what's important to them, especially when it has to do with education. I think that's what made the difference in getting the bill about the day of excused absence, because we had 4 kids there, all of whom wound up with an unexcused absence because they went to Trenton to testify in front of an assembly committee. Now, to my way of thinking, that's probably a much better experience, and they learned much more by doing so than they would have in sitting in a class having somebody tell it to them. But that is what I think. I mean, that was one of their arguments when they presented their arguments to the committee. The committee passed it out. The bill went to the floor in both the Senate and the Assembly. The Senate, it passed with a completely. I mean, there were no votes. In the Assembly, there was 1 no vote. The rest of was just unanimous. It was just a wonderful experience. And they can do it. All right. So I'm going to go back to the slideshow so that I can slip through these things really quickly. All right, and then we go back to what you saw before. You decide on your own level of engagement. And then this is the let's review that you saw at the end of that digital lesson. So it's the same thing. What can you do at each step along the way? This one encourages young people to get involved and to become activists. And this is where we refer people to the League of Women Voters in your area, because most leagues do have activist training. And that's because we are nonpartisan and issue agnostic. We as an organization, Energizing Young Voters, can't take them on that last step. We need to hand them over to the League, which is an advocacy organization as well as a nonpartisan organization. And then the rest of it is what you have seen before. So I'm going to stop sharing. And we have a couple of minutes left if there are any questions. Oh, Sarah Beth, your question about getting a copy of the script. I don't have a copy of the script, but you could probably get one. The subtitles are all on the actual video. So I would just, stop it and either screenshot it or something and then have someone put it together for me. But that's great. It would be it would be wonderful. And tell whoever does it to speak more slowly.
A little bit.
It's such adolescent speak.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've told them my old ears don't process that fast. But she said to me, well, you're not the one that I'm addressing.
You're not the audience.
I'm addressing my peers. So,
okay.
You are so right. And
Okay,
that's just
cool.
one more time when I realized that it shouldn't be us old people making all the decisions for what young people need to do today. But we can certainly be mentors. We can be the wind beneath their wings. And that's really an important thing, in addition to being advocates ourselves. So any final comments?
Yes, thank you.